Evan had always been the kind of young cowboy people almost forgot existed. He was quiet, gentle, and soft-spoken. The kind of man who lowered his eyes when someone spoke to him and always helped others even when no one helped him back. He grew up on an old ranch that sat between empty hills and long grass that waved like yellow oceans under the wind. For years, he lived with his father, a strong but aging man who tried to raise his son to be brave, honest, and hard-working. Evan learned those things well, but he never learned much about people. He never learned how to talk to strangers, how to make decisions without doubting himself, how to stand tall the way confident men did. When his father died after a sudden winter fever, Evan found himself alone in a way he had never imagined. The ranch felt too big for one person, too quiet, and too heavy on the heart. He tried his best. Every day, he fed the animals, fixed whatever he could, and rode into town once a week for supplies. People liked him, but they also worried about him. He looked tired all the time. His clothes hung loose from long days without proper meals. His hands shook from overwork, and everyone noticed that he always avoided eye contact when asked how he was doing. But Evan never complained. He simply said he was managing. One afternoon, while he was repairing a broken fence post, he didn't notice someone riding toward the ranch. The sun was almost down, making the hills glow orange. And Evan was so focused on his work that he didn't hear the hoofbeats until the rider was very close. When he looked up, he froze. Riding toward him was a woman he had never seen before. She was tall, much taller than most women he had ever met, and she carried herself with a calm, steady confidence. Her long dark hair was tied back, her clothes dusty from travel, and her shoulders broad like someone used to real work. She held the reins with one hand and a sealed letter with the other. He blinked slowly, confused and a little nervous. He was not used to unexpected visitors, and certainly not women who looked as strong as she did. She stopped her horse a few steps away and offered him a polite nod before speaking. "Are you Evan?" she asked, her voice deep but gentle. Evan swallowed. "Yes, ma'am, that's me." She got down from the horse, towering over him by a full head. Even though her size was surprising, her expression was soft and respectful. She introduced herself carefully, like someone who didn't want to startle him. "My name is Mara," she said. "I came because, well, it seems there was a letter sent from this ranch. A request. And I was chosen to come here." Evan frowned, confused. "A request? I didn't send anything." She held out the letter. "This says otherwise." He took it with slow, unsure hands. When he opened it, he recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to old Mr. Dalton, the neighbor who lived a few miles away. Dalton had always talked about helping Evan settle into life, helping him find companionship, helping him build a home again. Evan knew Dalton had meant well, but he never imagined the man would actually send a letter, a marriage letter, without telling him. Mara watched his face and saw confusion turn into shock. She lowered her eyes a little, embarrassed. "I came honestly. I was told someone here needed a partner, someone good at ranch work, someone dependable. I didn't want to come uninvited." But the letter was clear. Evan felt a heat rise in his face. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he sent this. I never meant to trouble you." She shook her head gently. "You didn't trouble me. I came because I hoped maybe this was a chance for a new start." Evan stood silently, unsure what to do. He wanted to be polite, but he also didn't want her to think she had been tricked. Mara noticed his discomfort, and she quickly stepped back a little, giving him space. "If you want me to leave, I understand," she said softly. "I don't want you to feel trapped. I'm not here to force anything." Her voice carried honesty, even a touch of sadness. Evan could see she wasn't pretending. She had traveled far, probably hoping for a place where she belonged. and looking at her dusty clothes and tired eyes, he felt something inside him soften. "You don't have to leave," he said quietly. "It's getting dark. You can stay the night at least. We can talk in the morning." Mara nodded gratefully. "Thank you. That's kind of you." He led her toward the small cabin, his heart beating faster than usual. He didn't know what to say or how to behave. He wasn't used to being around a woman, especially one like her. Mara seemed steady, mature, and confident, everything he felt he wasn't. She walked beside him, with her long stride, careful not to walk too fast. She didn't want him to feel small, though he already felt that way next to her. Not because she was intimidating, but because she seemed like someone who had survived many storms in life. When they entered the cabin, Mara took a quick look around. It wasn't messy, but it was clear Evan lived alone. Tools were scattered near the fireplace, a few plates stacked on the table, and the lamp on the shelf was nearly empty of oil. Evan hurried to hide the tools, embarrassed, but she smiled kindly. "It's all right," she said. "A ranch is hard for one person." She spoke as if she understood the weight he carried. Evan didn't know how to respond, so he lit a lamp and moved aside to give her space. He offered her water and whatever he could find for supper. Mara accepted politely, but she could tell Evan had barely eaten himself. He looked thin, tired, and overwhelmed. "You've been doing everything alone?" she asked softly. He nodded, trying to. She studied his face, noticing how his hands trembled slightly when he set the plates on the table. This wasn't a man who lacked strength. This was a man who had been carrying more than he could handle. "Your father, he passed recently?" she asked carefully. Evan's eyes lowered. "Yes, a few months ago. I'm still trying to figure things out." Mara didn't push him for more. Instead, she quietly helped him set the table and took a seat. They ate together, and for the first time in a long while, the cabin didn't feel silent and lonely. Mara asked gentle questions about the ranch, about the land, about the animals. Evan answered in short sentences at first, but as the conversation continued, he relaxed. He found himself telling her things he hadn't said out loud since his father died. When the meal ended, Mara stood and began washing the dishes without being asked. Evan jumped up, insisting he could do it, but she shook her head lightly. "You've had a long day," she said. "Let me help." He hesitated. No one had helped him in months. He wasn't used to someone stepping forward so naturally. Mara washed the plates with calm hands, and Evan couldn't stop noticing how strong she looked, how her tall frame filled the small kitchen space, how her movements were steady and firm, yet not harsh. When everything was done, Evan offered her the only guest bed he had, a small one in the corner room. Mara accepted with a grateful nod, but paused before stepping inside. "I didn't mean to bring confusion into your life," she said quietly. "If you want me gone tomorrow, say the word. I only want to stay if you're comfortable." Evan looked at her for a long moment. She had come so far, been so respectful, and tried so hard not to burden him. Something inside him whispered that sending her away would be wrong. "Let's talk tomorrow," he said softly. I think we both deserve that." Mara gave him a warm, understanding smile. A smile filled with patience. It eased something in his chest. She stepped into the small room, closed the door gently, and left him standing in the quiet cabin. Evan sat down by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He felt nervous, unsure, but strangely peaceful too. The ranch didn't feel so empty tonight. For the first time in months, he wasn't completely alone. And even though he hardly knew Mara, he sensed that her arrival was not an accident. She seemed strong enough to steady him, kind enough to understand him, and lonely enough to appreciate the chance of belonging somewhere. As the fire crackled and the night settled around the ranch, Evan wondered what tomorrow would bring, and why he felt, deep in his heart, that this woman had come into his life at exactly the right time. Evan woke up early the next morning, long before the sun rose over the hills. He had barely slept. His mind kept replaying Mara's arrival, her calm voice, her strong hands washing dishes, and the way she spoke with a mix of confidence and kindness. He wasn't used to someone helping him. He wasn't used to someone filling the quiet space of the cabin with gentle conversation. It made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: comfort. He stepped outside to check on the animals. The air was cold, the sky still dark, and dew glistened on the grass. As he walked toward the barn, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, he saw Mara stepping out of the cabin, already awake even earlier than him. She wore her same travel-worn clothes, her long strides steady and strong. "You're up early," Evan said softly. Mara smiled, a simple, natural smile. He nodded awkwardly. "You don't have to help. You're a guest." "I know," she replied. "But helping makes me feel useful. And I'd like to do something in return for your kindness last night." Evan didn't know how to argue with that. She walked beside him toward the barn, and he noticed something he didn't notice the night before. She wasn't the kind of person who waited to be told what to do. She looked around, understood what needed doing, and moved toward it with purpose. As soon as they entered the barn, she got to work. Without hesitation, she lifted the heavy feed sacks Evan usually struggled with. She carried them as if they weighed nothing. Evan watched with quiet amazement. He almost felt embarrassed that she could do things he often struggled with. But she didn't seem to judge him for it. She simply worked, steady and calm. "You must be strong," he said softly. She shrugged. "I've lived a life that required strength. Sometimes, strength is the only thing that keeps a person going." Evan didn't understand everything she meant, but he heard the heaviness behind her words. Mara wasn't just strong in body, she had a past that had shaped her. While she brushed the horses and set out the feed, Evan refilled the water troughs. Together, they worked in a peaceful rhythm. It almost felt as if she had been part of the ranch for months. She didn't ask questions about what to do. She simply noticed and acted. When they finished, the sun had just begun to rise. The sky turned pale pink and gold, spreading soft light across the land. Evan stood quietly, breathing in the cool morning air. But his peace didn't last long. He suddenly noticed the barn door leaning crookedly. He had been meaning to fix it for weeks, but never found the strength or time. Mara followed his gaze. "That door won't survive another windstorm." "I know," Evan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've been meaning to fix it." "Then let's fix it now," she said simply. "Oh, you don't need to." "I want to," she said, cutting him off gently but firmly. She walked to the door and examined the hinge. Evan grabbed his tools reluctantly, embarrassed that he couldn't maintain his own ranch properly. But Mara didn't let him sink into his thoughts. She worked beside him, steadying the door, holding the heavy wood while he screwed in the bolts. Her hand settled next to his as she held a plank, her fingers brushing his by accident. She glanced at him. "Your hands are shaking." He swallowed hard. "Just tired, I guess." "Tired doesn't make hands shake like that," she said softly. "You've been carrying too much alone." Evan looked down, ashamed. He didn't want her to see how overwhelmed he had been for months. But Mara didn't stare with pity. Instead, she gently placed her large hand over his, steadying it. Her palm was warm, strong, and reassuring. "It's all right," she said. "You don't have to act like everything is fine." Evan's breath trembled. No one had ever said that to him before. He almost felt like sitting down right there, just to breathe. Before he could speak, Mara gave his hand a small squeeze, an honest gesture of support. "I'll take care of you tonight," she said quietly. Her words weren't loud or dramatic. They were simple, calm, and full of meaning. She didn't say it as someone making a demand. She said it as someone who saw a burden and wanted to help lift it. Evan froze for a moment, unsure how to react. He felt a pressure in his chest, a mix of gratitude, fear, and confusion. "You don't have to," he whispered. "I know," she replied. "But I want to." He hesitated again, not used to such kindness. Mara's expression didn't change. She didn't pull away or look disappointed. Instead, she reached out gently, took his trembling hand in hers, and guided it toward the tools. "Come," she said. "Let's finish this. Together." This time he didn't resist. Her grip wasn't aggressive, it was firm, steady, and reassuring. She didn't treat him like he was weak. She treated him like someone who deserved help. They finished the barn door, and when they stepped back, Evan almost smiled. It had been months since he felt something so simple, pride in finishing a task, without feeling crushed by it. Mara wiped dust from her hands. "Ranch looks better already." He nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Thanks to you." She glanced at him again, her expression gentle. "Thanks to us." Inside the cabin, she helped him prepare breakfast. When Evan tried to take the heavy pot from the stove, she saw his hands shake again. Without saying anything, she took it from him and set it down carefully. During breakfast, Evan ate more than usual. He didn't realize how hungry he had been until the food warmed him. Mara noticed and smiled quietly. "You haven't had a proper meal in a long time," she said. "Guess not," he murmured, embarrassed. "Then tonight, you eat properly," she said firmly. "I'll cook." "Mara, you're the guest." "No," she corrected gently. "I'm someone who wants to help." After breakfast, she walked outside again and began checking the fence line. Evan watched through the doorway, amazed by how naturally she moved around the ranch, as if she belonged here. He followed her slowly, hands in his pockets. "You don't need to work so much." She turned toward him, wind brushing her hair back. "When I see something broken, I fix it. That's how I was raised." 100 problem. He nodded, unsure what to say. She continued walking, and he joined her. For a long moment, they said nothing. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, like walking with someone who understood the silence. Halfway along the fence, the wind picked up, and Evan instinctively pulled his jacket tighter. Mara noticed immediately and stepped closer. "You're cold," she said. "I'm fine." He replied quickly. "You're not," she said in a calm but firm voice. She removed her own shawl and draped it over his shoulders before he could protest. It smelled like leather, dust, and something warm that reminded him of safety. "I can't take your—" "It's all right," she said softly. "I'm used to cold." "You're not." He wanted to argue, but she gave him a look that told him not to. Not angry, not strict, just caring. Truly caring. As they walked back toward the cabin, Evan found himself speaking without thinking. "Why did you come here?" "Really?" She looked at him with quiet honesty. "Because all my life, people saw my size first and my heart second. I wanted a place where someone might look at me and see a person who just wants a home. Peace. Purpose." Evan slowed his steps. "Do you think you might find that here?" Evan, they were 5. They were gid find de velter. On half to the 5 work. "I don't know yet," she said softly. "But I think this place needs someone. And maybe I need a place too." He looked down at his boots, unsure how to answer. But inside, something warm moved slowly, like a seed being planted. Throughout the rest of the day, Mara repaired broken fence rails, swept the cabin porch, restacked firewood, and even patched a hole in the roof that had been dripping for months. Evan tried to help, but Mara gently guided him to easier tasks, careful not to overwhelm him. She never complained, never acted tired, and never made him feel less. By the time sunset came, the ranch looked more alive than it had in months. Evan stood quietly at the edge of the porch, watching Mara wash her hands at the pump. She looked peaceful, as if she had finally found something she had been missing. When she walked back toward him, the orange light of the sinking sun outlined her tall figure. She looked strong in a way that didn't frighten him, but made him feel safer than he had ever felt. "You worked hard today," Evan said softly. "We worked hard," she corrected again. Then she added gently, "And tonight, I'll still take care of you. You worked enough already." He looked at her with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty, but Mara simply touched his arm lightly, like a promise, and walked inside to prepare supper. For the first time in a long, lonely year, Evan didn't feel lost. He didn't feel small. He didn't feel helpless. He felt supported, and he didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, he knew one thing without doubt. Mara's presence had already changed everything. The next few days moved in a rhythm neither Evan nor Mara expected. It felt natural, almost gentle, as if the ranch itself welcomed the change. Every morning, Evan woke to find that Mara was already outside, tending to the animals or checking the fences. And every time he stepped out of the cabin, she greeted him with a calm nod or a small smile that eased the tension inside him. Evan wasn't used to having someone around. His father had been the only constant figure in his life, and losing him left a hollow space inside his heart. But Mara's presence didn't fill it in a loud or forceful way. Instead, she brought a steady warmth, like a slow fire that grows without making noise. One morning, Evan found her fixing a section of the fence that had fallen during the last storm. She lifted heavy logs and hammered nails with strong, confident hands. He walked closer, watching quietly. "You don't have to do everything yourself," he said gently. Mara paused and looked at him, her expression calm. "I know, but working keeps my mind steady, and this ranch needs hands. If mine can help, I'm happy to use them." Evan gave a shy smile. "You make it look easy." She laughed softly. "Nothing is easy. You just learn to work with what life gives you." Evan nodded, understanding more than she knew. He stepped beside her, holding the wooden beam while she adjusted it. They worked together in silence, until the fence stood straight again. When they finished, Mara brushed dust from her hands and glanced at the wide fields. "This land has good bones," she said. "It just needed someone to care for it." Evan didn't know if she meant him or herself, or both. Later that day, they sat under the shade of a large tree near the corral. Evan rarely took breaks, but Mara insisted he sit and rest. She handed him a tin cup of cool water, and when he drank, she watched with a gentle expression. "You're improving," she said. "Improving?" he asked. "You're not hiding your tiredness anymore. You're letting yourself rest when you need to." Evan looked down at the cup, a little embarrassed. "I didn't want to look weak." "Rest is not weakness," Mara said firmly. "It's survival." Her tone carried a strength that came from experience, painful experience. Evan sensed it, but didn't push her to explain. Mara wasn't someone who shared her story easily, but she shared pieces when she was ready. Over the next days, more pieces came. One evening, after the chores were done, they sat on the porch. The sky was filled with colors, soft pinks and warm golds. Mara leaned back slightly, relaxing in a way Evan rarely saw. "You lived far from towns?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Moved from place to place. Not many places allowed me to stay long." Evan swallowed. Because I don't fit the picture people have," she said simply. "Some men want a timid woman. Some women think I look threatening. Some towns think I take up too much space. ABM." Evan frowned, bothered by the unfairness of it. "You're not threatening." Mara gave him a warm smile. Thank you. But it's not just strength. When you don't look like everyone expects, they treat you like you don't belong. Evan had felt something similar. Growing up, shy and quiet, he had often been overlooked or teased for being too gentle. He didn't say anything, but Mara noticed the way his shoulders lowered. You understand that feeling, don't you? She asked softly. Evan nodded. I've always been different from other men in town. Not loud, not confident. People think I'm easy to ignore. Mara looked at him with a steady gaze. You're not easy to ignore. He met her eyes for a second before looking away, embarrassed by the compliment. But he couldn't hide the faint smile forming on his lips. Their bond continued to grow in small moments like these. Sometimes it appeared in silence while they worked side by side. Sometimes it appeared in gentle words, exchanged near the fire. Sometimes it appeared when Mara fixed something broken, and Evan watched with gratitude he didn't know how to express. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered suddenly. The wind grew sharp, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Evan rushed outside to secure loose items, and before he could even call her, Mara was already running across the yard to help. The storm hit fast. Rain fell in thick sheets, and the wind screamed through the trees. Evan struggled with a loose shed roof panel, trying to nail it down before it blew away. Mara saw him from across the yard and sprinted toward him. Evan, she shouted over the wind. Leave it. It's too dangerous. But Evan tried to finish the task, thinking he had enough time. Suddenly, the wind slammed into the shed with violent force. The roof panel snapped loose and swung downward, and Evan froze as it came toward him. Before he could react, Mara threw herself forward and grabbed his arm, pulling him back with all her strength. The panel crashed where he had been standing, the sound echoing through the storm. Evan stumbled, nearly falling, but Mara steadied him, shielding him with her body as another gust of wind passed. You could have been hurt, she said breathlessly. I didn't see it coming, he whispered. That's why we watch out for each other, she said firmly. She guided him back to the cabin, her large hand wrapped around his arm with protective strength. Once inside, they stood near the fireplace, dripping with rainwater. Evan could barely speak. You saved me, he said softly. Mara shrugged slightly. Anyone would have. No, Evan said, looking at her with sincere eyes. Not anyone. She looked away, almost shy for the first time since arriving on the ranch. I'm just glad you're safe. As the storm raged outside, Mara prepared warm soup while Evan sat quietly, watching her move around the kitchen. Her presence filled the cabin, not in an overwhelming way, but in a comforting one. Watching her, he realized something he had begun to depend on her. Not out of weakness, but because she made life feel possible again. When they ate together, Evan felt a heaviness on his chest, not fear, but something like hope. It scared him a little, but he didn't want it to go away. After the storm passed, the sky cleared into a deep blue night. Mara sat on the porch, watching the stars. Evan joined her, sitting close enough to feel her warmth. The gentle wind hummed around them. Thank you, he said again. For what? Mara asked softly. For everything. The work. The meals. Saving me today. Staying here. 1. 7. She turned her head and looked at him. Evan, I didn't come here to be a guest. I came because I thought someone needed me. And now I think. She paused, then continued with a soft breath. I think I needed someone too. Evan felt his heart beat a little faster. You're not alone here, he whispered. Her eyes softened. Neither are you. They sat in silence, but it wasn't empty. It was full of shared understanding, shared pain, shared growth. The kind of silence that only forms when two people slowly begin to trust each other. The next day, the townsfolk came by to check on the ranch after the storm. When they saw Mara working, lifting heavy logs, guiding Evan through repairs, They looked surprised. Some whispered among themselves, wondering who she was and why she was staying. One older woman called Evan aside and whispered, "You sure about letting her stay? She looks like trouble." Evan felt something inside him tighten. For the first time, in a long time, he spoke with steady confidence. "She's not trouble. She's the best thing that's happened to this ranch." The woman blinked in surprise, but Evan didn't explain further. He walked back to Mara, who was tightening a rope around a post. She glanced at him. "They don't trust me," she said quietly. Evan shook his head. "They just don't know you." Mara looked at him, her expression softening. "But you do?" He swallowed, his voice low. "I'm learning. And everything I learn makes me trust you more." Mara didn't speak for a moment. Then she gently reached out and brushed a piece of straw off his shoulder, a small gesture but filled with warmth. Evan felt something deep inside him shift, like a door opening slowly. Later that evening, Mara prepared supper again. Evan watched as she chopped vegetables, stirred pots, and set the table. She moved with confidence, but also with care. He wanted to help, but she looked at him with a small smile. "You worked enough today," she said. "Let me take care of tonight." He took a seat at the table, feeling strangely shy but grateful. When she served the meal, she sat across from him, her eyes warm, with quiet kindness. "You're changing," she said. "How?" "You're not hiding behind silence anymore," she said. "You're speaking. Opening up." Evan lowered his eyes. "Because you make it easy." She smiled softly. They ate together, the sound of the fireplace filling the cabin. Evan felt more at peace with her than he had felt with anyone in a long time. It didn't scare him anymore. It felt right. By the time night settled, he knew something for sure. Mara wasn't just helping him survive. She was helping him grow, helping him breathe again, helping the ranch come alive. And without saying it out loud, he felt something new forming inside him, a deep respect, a quiet admiration, and maybe, slowly, the beginning of something even more meaningful. Days passed after the storm, and the ranch slowly changed from a lonely, half-broken place into a living home. Fences stood strong, the barn roof no longer leaked, and the animals seemed calmer with two steady hands caring for them. But the biggest change wasn't in the ranch, it was inside Evan. He started walking with a bit more confidence. His eyes lifted from the ground more often. He spoke more than he used to, sometimes even initiating conversation. And though he still had shy habits, there was a warmth in him that hadn't been there in months. Mara noticed every small change, but she never pointed them out to make him feel pressured. She simply let him grow at his own pace. One morning, as he opened the cabin door, he saw Mara carrying a large stack of firewood across the yard. The morning sun made her hair glow softly, and her tall figure moved with steady purpose. Evan watched her for a moment before stepping forward. "You don't have to do that alone," he said. Mara glanced at him and smiled. "I know, but I'm used to carrying more than this." Evan took a few logs from the top of her stack anyway. She nodded, pleased not because he helped, but because he wanted to. Evan felt a quiet pride settle in his heart. He wasn't trying to impress her, he simply wanted to stand beside her, not behind her. After they stacked the firewood, they walked back toward the cabin. Mara sensed something unsettled in him. He kept glancing at her, as if searching for the right words. "Something on your mind?" she asked gently. Evan hesitated. "A little." She waited patiently, giving him time. Finally, he said, "I've been thinking about what you said before, about needing a place and needing someone." She looked at him carefully. "Yes? I think I've needed someone for a long time," he said softly. "But I didn't know it until you came." Her expression softened. "Evan," he swallowed nervously, "I don't want to say something wrong. I just want to be honest." "Honesty is never wrong," she said gently. The conversation ended there, Not because he was scared, but because he was thinking deeply. Mara didn't push. She understood that some decisions needed space. For the rest of the day, they continued working, repairing a trough, brushing the horses, organizing supplies in the barn. Evan spoke in small bursts, asking questions, sharing memories, and listening to Mara's experiences. She explained how she moved from town to town, how most places treated her like she didn't fit, and how she almost stopped hoping to find somewhere she belonged. "You know," she said while tightening a rope on a gate, "I didn't expect to feel calm here." Evan paused. "Do you?" She met his eyes. "Yes. More. Every day. More. Every day." That simple sentence stayed with him long after the chores were done. Later in the evening, when the sky turned orange and purple, Evan sat on the porch, looking at the land. The ranch looked different, stronger, safer, and it wasn't just because the fences were fixed. It was because Mara brought a sense of stability that he had never known. When she joined him on the porch, she sat beside him without speaking. She didn't need to. Evan felt her presence like a calming weight, grounding him. After a long moment, he finally asked the question that had been buried inside him. "Mara, do you think you'll stay here long?" She took a slow breath. "Evan, I came here because a letter said someone needed a partner. But I didn't expect to find meaning here. I didn't expect to find someone who treats me with respect." He looked down, his fingers twisting nervously. "I don't want you to leave." Mara's eyes softened, but she didn't speak yet. She wanted to hear him clearly. "I don't want you to stay because of the letter, or because you feel you owe me anything," he continued. I want you to stay because we work well together. Because I feel calm when you're here. Because the ranch feels alive with you in it." Mara felt her chest tighten with emotion she rarely showed. She had always been strong, strong enough to handle hardship, strong enough to face rejection. But strength often came with loneliness. Hearing Evan speak so sincerely did something to her heart. "Evan," she said quietly, "that means more to me than you know." He wasn't finished. He took a deep breath, summoning courage he didn't know he had. "You said once that you wanted a place where someone sees your heart. I see your heart, Mara. I see your kindness, your patience, your strength, everything you do. It makes life easier. It makes life better." Mara turned her head slightly, blinking back emotion. "You really feel that way?" He nodded. "I do. And I don't want this to end when morning comes. I want us to choose what happens next. Together." For the first time since arriving at the ranch, Mara set her tools aside emotionally. She wasn't standing tall like a strong worker, or behaving politely like a guest. She simply sat as a woman who had been searching for a long time. "Evan," she whispered, "I didn't expect you to choose me." Evan looked confused. "Why not?" "Because many men don't want a woman like me. Too tall. Too strong. Too different. You're exactly what this ranch needs," he said softly. "Exactly what I need." Non. Their eyes held for a long moment, filled with quiet understanding. Evan wasn't speaking in excitement or fear. He was speaking with sincerity that came from the heart. Then something unexpected happened. Mara looked away, almost shy, a kind of shyness that didn't fit her strong image. "Before you decide," she said slowly, "you should know something." "What is it?" "If you ask me to stay, I won't stay as a helper. I won't stay as a visitor." She paused. "I'll stay as someone who stands beside you. Every day. Every season. Through everything." Evan's breath caught in his throat. "That's exactly what I want." She blinked, surprised. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," he said with quiet certainty. Mara exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of fear and doubt. She gave a small, warm smile, one filled with relief. "Then, I'll stay," she said softly. Evan felt something shift inside him, something deep, comforting, and steady. The kind of feeling that told him he had just made the right choice. Maybe the best choice of his life. The next day, they started working the ranch as partners, not just two people sharing chores, but two people sharing purpose. Evan walked with more confidence, talking to her openly. Mara worked with a new kind of peace, knowing she finally had a place she could root herself in. When the townsfolk visited again, they noticed the difference. The ranch looked strong, the animals healthier, the air lighter. And when they saw Mara and Evan working side by side, they realized something important had changed. One man commented, "Never thought that shy boy would find himself a partner like that." Another whispered, "Maybe she's good for him." They were right. As weeks passed, Mara and Evan developed rhythms that only true partners share. She handled heavy tasks with ease. He handled careful details with patience. She protected the ranch from storms. He managed the books, animals, and planning. They complemented each other perfectly. Every evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset, sharing stories, thoughts, and quiet laughs. And every night, Mara cooked supper, insisting she would take care of him after long days, just like she had promised. In return, Evan found ways to take care of her, two small things she didn't expect. He fixed her saddle. He crafted a sturdy shelf in the cabin for her belongings. He surprised her with a clean cloth to tie her hair back. And once, when she worked too hard, he pulled her gently away from the task and said softly, "Rest. I'll take care of things. Now." Mara looked at him with quiet pride. "You've grown," she said. "Because you helped me," he replied. Their bond was no longer just comfort. It was no longer just survival. It was partnership, real, strong, and loyal. One evening, months after she first arrived, Evan stood at the porch doorway, watching Mara brush down a horse. The sunset framed her tall figure, her strong hands moving with gentle care. He stepped toward her slowly. "Mara," he said softly. She looked up. "Yes? I'm glad you came that night," he said. "I'm glad you stayed. I'm glad you're here with me." Mara felt her heart warm. "I'm glad too." He took a breath. "And I want you to know something clearly. You're not here because of a letter. You're here because I choose you, every day." Her eyes softened with emotion. She placed her large, steady hand on his shoulder. "And I choose you," she said gently, "every day." The evening wind brushed past them, carrying the quiet promise of a shared future. There were no big speeches, no dramatic gestures, just simple, honest understanding between two people who finally found what they were missing. And from that day forward, the ranch wasn't just a place where two lives met. It became a home built on trust, respect, and a partnership stronger than any storm.